Hello, people of YouTube land, and those that are members of the Cringe Crew gaming community Discord, and those that follow Ted and I on Twitch. I am Traductus,
And I'm Ted.
and this is the Cringe Crew Gaming James Bond podcast, where I, a James Bond fan, and Ted, a filthy casual newbie, watch the James Bond films and we review them. And today we got a staple and a big thing in my childhood, big thing in other people's childhoods, a big title in gaming history. We are reviewing 1995's Goldeneye. And this is the first one to star Pierce Brosnan. This is directed by Martin Campbell. First movie to be directed by Martin Campbell. He will come back to direct Casino Royale. So between then, it's going to be one-off directors.
Okay.
Which may be, a good thing or a bad thing, depending on the movie. This is also considered to be the first Bond film not to use any elements of Ian Fleming's work, although I argue against that. I think the plot of this, with like the villain's motivations, are very similar to the plot of the book Moonraker. This is also the first film to be produced by Cubby Broccoli's daughter, being Barbara Broccoli, who she co-produced this with her stepbrother Michael G. Wilson. Or that might be her half-brother. Whatever. It's Cubby Broccoli's stepson. This is also the last film that Cubby Broccoli has any involvement with, which he would pass away, I think, between this and Tomorrow Never Dies. I'm not entirely sure on that. This movie was released in 95, meaning that this is a 6-year gap. The only gap this comes close between movies is between Spectre and No Time to Die, and that is because of COVID. This one has to do with the lawsuit, which we will get to. This has had a budget of $60 million and made a box office profit $356.4 million. Or no, that's box office total, sorry. Making this the highest grossing Bond film of all time until Skyfall, even adjusted for inflation.
Interesting.
So, yeah, so this was a, obviously, if we have video games, and with my introduction to this, I found this out through a pinball game made by Sega. So they even had pinball games, and I actually looked up what a pinball machine cost, and you don't want to fucking know. Let's just say it's out of my budget.
I think it's valuable, Stallman, before you get too far into, casting characters, about your introduction to Bond, since this was the place that did it.
Yeah. My aunt and uncle owned a bar called Brewbusters. It's no longer there. It's torn down. It's a parking lot. But I was really into the pinball games there. I was also into arcade games, and this is basically what kind of got me into gaming, because like Sega would make pinball machines, and then I saw that they made arcade machines, and then therefore I bought a Sega Genesis. But me just being really into like this pinball, it was Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and Goldeneye were the two pinball machines that got me really into pinball. And then and by the way, this is after this got released. Like, I got into like James Bond like probably around like 96, 97. Like when Tomorrow Never Dies was like kind of coming out, even though I never watched Tomorrow Never Dies when it came out, because we'll get to there. It was, I saw advertisements, and then it was never spoken of again for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But it's like I like the pinball machine. I was hanging out with my cousin and his friends. They had a Nintendo 64. That was the big fucking awesome console. And the reason why I ended up getting the N64 as opposed to the Sega Saturn was because 4 controllers, Goldeneye was on it. Loved playing Goldeneye. Asked my parents for a Nintendo 64. Played the hell out of Goldeneye. And ended up watching the movie. Loved the movie. And then after that, ended up watching The World Is Not Enough. And loved that movie. And I just been a James Bond fan ever since. And I went back and watched other James Bond films that came out whenever they popped up on TV. And with the internet, just made it a hell of a lot easier. So this really is the kind of the start. The pinball game's technically the start, but movie side wise, this is the start. And to me, Pierce Brosnan is my James Bond. Like when people say James Bond, I think Pierce Brosnan. I'm in that era of that. Much like if you were like in the early 60s, it's Sean Connery. If you're in the 70s, it's Roger Moore. Late 80s, probably Timothy Dalton. And in your case, Ted, since you weren't really paying attention to these movies until Daniel Craig became Bond, yours is Daniel Craig.
Yep.
So, needless to say, depending on how egregious the negatives are, there might be a first time we have a shouting match because this is the first time the sacred cow is my sacred cow. So, although OHMSS was a sacred cow for me, and I took the criticisms very well. So we'll see on this. That being said, go into I guess the lawsuit first. All right. So the reason why there was a long gap and why Goldeneye was essentially in development hell for a while, and it wasn't originally going to be Goldeneye, it was going to be Property of a Lady, which was going to be Timothy Dalton's third film. He was under a 3-movie contract. He was also under the contract was also like 7 years. So so pretty much do 3 movies within 7 years. So they were going to. They had the They had a director picked. They had a script, and then all of a sudden, MGM was going to be sold to a company called Kintex, and they couldn't provide the $50 million letter of credit, so that deal fell apart. Then a company called Pathé Entertainment saw that MGM was for sale, and they quickly tried to buy it for $1.2 billion to create MGM Pathé Communications. And the CEO, Giancarlo Peretti, intended to sell off the distribution rights of the studio's catalog so he could collect advance payments to finance the buyout. And this included the broadcasting rights to the 007 series, the James Bond movies. And it was at a cut rate price, and also cut out Dan Jack, which is the shell company that Cubby Broccoli owned, that has the rights to the James Bond movies. So Dan Jack's part of Eon Films, and Cubby Broccoli ended up suing because it's like, hey, you're trying to sell the distribution rights for, broadcasting rights to something that I own half of. Just because you own the other half does not mean that I'm going to be cut out of this deal. And the lawsuit ended up being filed. There was counter lawsuits, and it ended up being settled after the bankruptcy of MGM Pathé in 1992. and that was after Timothy Dalton's contract ran up, and
Nice.
they were at this time decided to scrap Property of a Lady and make a new movie. And they actually contacted Timothy Dalton, asked him to do if he wanted to do the movie. He said, "Yeah, sure. It's like I'll do my third and last contractually obligated Bond film." And they said, "Well, we're gonna need you to do like 3 more because like we really want, it's been a while. We kind of want to make sure, people are kind of wondering if like if this movie series is going to continue. It's past the Cold War. Is there really need for James Bond in a post Cold War, you know, environment?" And Dalton's just like, "I'm only going to do the one. I don't want to be like Roger Moore and do this shit in my 50s." And so therefore he was out, and then they'd had to, find a new Bond. So they had to find a new Bond. They had to more or less try to cast everything. So it just led to a long delay, and this movie had to be a success. Otherwise, there was not going to be any more James Bond films. Like, this was definitely like, make it, either Hail Mary it. It's either going to win the game or you're just going to freaking lose.
Do you believe that the like such a long gap contributed to the success of this film?
Um, I think so, because they had more time to work on it. Um, we'll
Well,
see if
l-
that's
I guess let me rephrase. Like, do you think so many people went to see it? Like, so it made such a box office splash because it was the first time people had Bond in the course of 6 or 7 years.
I guarantee that's probably also because I know that this follows a lot of like typical Bond tropes, but bear in mind there is that 6-year gap, and unless you had like these movies on VHS and binged watched them on VHS, or if you were like a Bond aficionado or someone that just like binge watch these to kind of get your thing up to speed, which I'm not sure was a common thing back then. Like, it seems kind of recent now with like people binge watching stuff on Netflix. Um, but I think like a lot of like, hey, it's like the tropes don't seem like old tropes that have been done to death. They seem kind of new due to the gap, probably with people probably forgetting said tropes, or with like how like the tropes were kind of done in today's, well, not in today's, but like in 96. It
Right.
probably is like, yeah, this is what I remember, this is why I like the series.
I guess just the accessibility feels weird, like if you wanted to watch a Bond movie back in 91, if you didn't have a VHS, you were just kind of shit out of
Fuck.
luck, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like whereas like, man, I can clamor for a new Christopher Nolan Batman movie, but I can also just go turn on the Dark Knight on Netflix anytime I damn well please. Like I
Right.
wonder if the demand like contributed to the success it had in the box office. It's
Yeah,
interesting.
I totally like agree that with that gap, and I think that probably might have attributed a little bit to No Time to Die, possibly, but at the same time, like all digital age, it's accessible to get your fix
Right.
from like all the previous ones, but yeah, with this, it's just like hopefully you got a Blockbuster by you. Luckily with me, there was a place called Movie Stop that's still there. There's still a video rental store that is like, mom and pop that is still in my town. They also sell comic books, which I'm pretty sure is what keeps them afloat, but
Jeez.
um yeah, back to where I was going with this. We're gonna go into casting now that we kind of got everything on there. They ended up getting their director, Martin Campbell. Um, they basically recast everyone except for Desmond Llewellyn as Q. I don't know why they recast Moneypenny, but she is recast from Carolyn Bliss to Samantha Bond, no relation to James Bond.
God damn it, Stallman.
She will be Miss Moneypenny and all the way up to Die Another Day, making her the second longest tenured person to play Moneypenny behind Lois Maxwell, who played Moneypenny for like 30 years. But they do say there is a. I haven't really found why they recast Robert Brown with Judi Dench. There are speculations because the head of MI5 at the time was a woman, so therefore they figure to go with the times to make the head of MI6 be a woman, and I think Judi Dench does a hell of a good job. As for Robert Brown, since we forgot to compare him to like Bernard Lee, I think Robert Brown's portrayal of M is like more hands-on to the mission as opposed to like Bernard Lee kind of sitting behind a desk, but he's also kind of like more by the book, so to speak, not going along with like Bond's horseshit, despite being sick of it.
I'd agree. Part of that I think is the way that the characters are written. Like I feel like they recognized that M was going to be a major part of the Bond movies, like, and I think that had something to do with it. But I'd agree, they were two very different characters.
That being said, Robert Brown and Bernard Lee's M, it's not specified if they're two different like two different M's, or if they're supposed to be the same M. Judi Dench's M is a different M. Like, it's not like, oh yeah, all of a sudden M's a woman. No, it's specifically she is the new M.
And admittedly, like watching during this movie, like I guess I didn't realize that M was a code name for the person who was in charge of the secret operations. Like, and I feel like they didn't do a really good job highlighting that to other audiences. Like that felt very, you had to be British to know that was already a thing. But I guess they made it clear enough that it was a different enough person.
I'm not sure if the head of MI6 is actually M, but in the books, M actually stands for the person's name, and Bernard Lee and Robert Brown's, assuming they're the same M, his name is like Miles something. So, so M actually stands for Miles. Wow, and Judi Dench, her first name starts with an M as well. So I guess the head of MI6, they just, if their name has like an M in it, they just. That's your code.
It felt like a weird transition if like it wasn't something highlighted to you, but it makes enough sense.
Right. And with those filled in, we'll go with Pierce Brosnan. Pierce Brosnan gets cast because, they wanted him beforehand because of Remington Steele. Unfortunately, didn't get the job for Living Daylights because the company that, the TV studio that canceled Remington Steele wanted to have, oh, hey, James Bond's our star, so we're gonna,
renew it, yeah.
Renew it, and that bit them in the ass because after they said no to Brosnan, that Remington Steele season got canceled right afterwards. I mean, they still did the season, they just canceled it like right after one season. But Brosnan, impressed everybody and ends up being James Bond until all the way up to Die Another Day. And to me personally, I'm not saying he's my favorite. I have to see like, the other films that he's in to really like see if like he's my favorite so far. I will say this though, to me, like in my picture in my head, he looks the most James Bond.
Yeah, like we said, I think a lot of that relies on the nostalgia of when you became to know
Yeah,
Bond. You know, like I will associate Connery with Bond forever, but like not
right.
because he's. If
Same
you
with
say
same
James
with
Bond,
Roger
I'm
Moore.
right. I'm gonna say if you say James Bond, I'm gonna think of what's his name, fucking
Daniel
Daniel
Craig.
Craig. Yeah, like it's just the face I'm going to see for the rest of my life, right? If you say Sean
Right.
Connery, I'm going to think James Bond before just about anything. Well, I might think SNL for his case specifically, but right, like Roger Moore might be a better example that like
Yeah.
I'll recognize
And
him. I'll think James Bond before I think anything else. But when you
yeah.
say Bond first, it's not the
Yeah.
face I see. It's
And George
nostalgia.
Lazenby.
Hmm.
Timothy Dalton is weird because not the case.
I think his
Of
short stint like contributes to that a lot. That like it
right.
was
And
only two Bond
also that he's
films.
had a unlike George Lazenby has had like a well-known acting career, while Lazenby was like mainly in B movies. Like Timothy
Right.
Dalton was like in, you know, big budget shit.
And
Um,
closer enough to my era that
right.
I would think of him in more things than just Bond. Where Lazenby, his
Yeah.
name I only recognize because of Bond.
And Brosnan, I think, is kind of the same way as Timothy Dalton. Like, I
Hmm.
understand him in other things. It's just, I know Brosnan from James Bond, so therefore, you know, he's, he's Bond for me. So,
Yeah.
um, but anyway, let's get to like new people that are introduced. I'm gonna start with Jack Wade, who might as well be Felix Leiter, uh, or at least Felix Leiter with like that's really into gardening. But apparently, I guess despite the books bringing Felix Leiter back after he got his leg eaten by a shark, they just decided not to bring in Felix Leiter at all during Brosnan's tenure. So we got Jack Wade, who's played by Joe Don Baker, who played the villain in The Living Daylights. Which me seeing this first, and then a young me seeing Living Daylights, you can see that really confused the hell out of me. So, but I will say I think Joe Don Baker fits more of a role of Jack Wade as opposed to Brad Whitaker.
Yeah.
But um not that there wasn't really any scenes with Brad Whitaker while in Goldeneye. There's a lot of scenes with like Jack Wade. There's more than, 2 or 3 scenes. Uh but that's basically what we have for someone that's returning. New people we're going to talk about. I'm gonna say Chechi Karyo as Dmitry Mishkin, the Russian defense minister. The only reason why I mentioned him first, he's the French dude from the Mel Gibson movie The Patriot, not the shitty Steven Seagal movie The Patriot. Um, he ends up getting this role mainly because this role was supposed to be Pushkin, so John Rhys Davies' character, but John Rhys Davies turned down the role, so therefore they rewrote like a new character as opposed to like recasting him for whatever reason. I don't know. I don't know why they don't recast certain people. They do it with other people, but whatever. Um and then we also have people that are just like completely new. We have Robbie Coltrane as Valentin Zerkowski, who is a he's a Russian gangster and an ex KGB uh agent who has a past with Bond. Um and I kind of wonder if that third Timothy Dalton movie was made and then if Brosnan did a movie before this, um if like there would have been this character, he would have actually had that backstory, but needless to say, for those that don't know who Robbie Coltrane is, he is Hagrid from the Harry Potter series.
Which you would never pick up by looking at him.
Oh no, yeah,
Never.
his beard's shaved and everything.
Like Stallman
Uh,
pointed it out, and I still had to look at it fifth, sixth, seventh time. Like you'll never fucking see it.
Yeah, and he will reprise the role in The World Is Not Enough. So we're gonna get more repeat people. We also have for the main uh um love interest, the main Bond woman, Isabella Scorupko as Natalia Simonova. She is a Swedish actress, and is also plays Alex Jensen in Reign of Fire and Monique Albertine in Vertical Limit. So she's actually had done some things after this, although she's most known for this role. And to now rip the band-aid off of probably the person that had like the biggest breakout role on this, Famke Janssen as Xenia Onotop, Dr. Jean Grey, and numerous other things that Ava Moore and Nip Tuck. Like Famke Janssen, basically this career, her playing Xenia Onotop. Beforehand, she was just basically a model. She did some acting, but like this really kicked off her acting career, and I'm pretty sure we'll discuss like,
Yep.
Yeah, we can see why. We can see why.
Yep.
And then we got good old Sean Bean as Alec Trevelyan. Now, originally Alec Trevelyan was going to be played by Anthony Hopkins and was going to have more of like he was James Bond's mentor in MI6. However, they weren't able to get Anthony Hopkins, so Sean Bean auditioned for the role and did a good job, so they made him his contemporary. And spoiler alert, like almost every single Sean Bean movie, he dies. So, which wouldn't be that much of a spoiler back then, because I don't know if it was a trend, but now it's like, oh, it's Sean Bean. He's gonna die.
He's just so good at death.
Oh, and for a cameo, and this was her first movie. Minnie Driver, who you would probably know from Good Will Hunting, plays Swarovski's mistress, who's like singing really badly in the Gangster Club.
So bad, like so intentionally badly that it's part of the plot that he tells her to shut up and go away. Like Jesus, man. Wasn't even on my list, but yeah, we gotta mention. Holy terrible.
Stand by your man.
Oh man,
and it's a great scene too. But that's really what I have for casting.
Just say if you got nothing else, we can.
I got nothing else. I mean, there is stuff I could talk about by music, but we're gonna get into likes and dislikes when we get to the music part. All right.
Okay.
I have something to say about the kind of soundtrack on this.
Okay. I feel like more natural transition is to go dislikes into likes for this one. I know your list was shorter. If you want to get started.
All right. So the theme song "Goldeneye" is written by Bono and The Edge of U2 and performed by Tina Turner. It sounds like this would... It's not a bad song at all. It's just... You have Tina Turner. I figured I'd have more. I figured I'd have something as cool and badass as, like, License to Kill with, like, Gladys Knight. I was expecting kind of that oomph, but... It's... just kind of there.
I agree. It falls flat of what you know went behind it. Like, U2 has songwriting prowess. Bono and The Edge obviously being a big part of that for U2. Tina Turner's ability to perform is very, very strong, and the song just felt flat.
It's not bad. It's not like I want to pull my hair out bad like For Your Eyes Only, but... and the soundtrack is composed by Eric Serra. They did ask John Barry to compose like the music on this, but he turned the offer down. And Sarah's score is one of the criticisms of this movie. Like, people basically say, like, the soundtrack to this movie sucks. I wouldn't say that, because there's some points where there's some part, because I think the James Bond theme is used very well in this movie.
For the most
And
part.
I think that there's a few things in the soundtrack that sound like footsteps, like, I think that's kind of interesting and kind of cool and adds some tension. But there's other parts, like where Bond's doing his evaluation, and there's the car chase between him and Xenia. The music behind that just sucks.
I would say that, like, I wouldn't say that the soundtrack is necessarily bad. Like, I wouldn't call it necessarily a detriment to the movie, but
It's not. None of my negatives are a detriment to
it,
the movie. It's
it,
just
it also just doesn't add anything. Like,
yeah.
to compare it to other Bond films, there have been ones that are, like, notably missing portions of the soundtrack, or the soundtrack was used awkwardly, just things out of place. I would just say that this one didn't enhance anything. It more just created background noise that made it less uncomfortable rather than adding to it, which I guess you could put on a negatives list, but it wasn't notable enough that, like, it made a difference to me, I guess.
Right.
It just kind of, it sat in a place where it did its job. It didn't make notes one way or another. It just kind of existed. It could have been better, and we've seen it, but it wasn't bad.
Yeah. Another criticism I have, and this is kind of nitpicky, but I don't like the gun barrel in this. And it's not like Pierce Brosnan, like how he does the gun barrel. That's not the thing I don't like. I don't like the computer effect that they have with the reflection with, like, inside, like, the twist of the barrel. To it seems very dated, and
you know, to watch it, like, I agree that there was something that felt off about it. I thought it was the fact that it happened at a faster pace, right? Like, in previous gun barrel scenes, like, it's been slow and deliberate, and in this one it just kind of felt rushed, like, we need a gun barrel scene, just do the thing. And
yeah, and Brosnan's gun barrel, like how he does it, is pretty rushed too. He just, like, it's like, okay.
It's like a footstep and a half, he turns, he shoots, whatever. The problem that bothered me most was not the animations of it or whatever. It was the blood coming down. That's the same exact blood that's like a shutter sheet coming down, and it's the same one they've used since the 60s. That bothered the shit out of me. It felt weird to watch it, like it felt out of place, but it wasn't.
I think it's the combination of both. Like, the blood's like everything like back how it was, but like, you put new things with the gun, but it just doesn't.
Felt like that some of those effects would have been updated since the 60s, and you felt like the ones that were there were just sat weird because
and they, if I remember right, they do update it for. I know they at least update it for Die Another Day, because they add something that's kind of stupid in there, but it's all, and then with the Daniel Craig ones, it's definitely updated. Which they do cool, neat shit with the gun barrels on those. But yeah, it just didn't kind of do that with me. And then my third negative, without stepping on your toes, about the Famke Janssen's character orgasming every time she freaking kills someone.
It look, there's fetishes, and then there's I'm getting off to watching people die. I won't even say that it detracted from the movie or made you uncomfortable or whatever, but just like they really overdid how violently attracted she was to violence. It just, like, they just didn't need to write in the character that hard.
Somehow it works, but at the same time, it's just like
so over the top. I won't even, like, I don't think it was bad, right? Like, I will, not to transition too hard, but like, one of the detriments that I have is that not necessarily about the movie, but just in watching the movie, is I felt like I watched this more as a critic, where I was like trying to really analyze it instead of just being able to sit down and enjoy a movie. And I felt like because I was watching it that way, it didn't register as positively as it would have just to sit down and watch it as a casual viewer.
Right.
But her character especially, I mean, you mentioned that this was her big breakout role,
Yeah.
that like this was the thing that spawned her movie
She
career.
killed this role. Like,
I mean, she acted the shit out of this role, no doubt about it. But it felt weird that like it just didn't need to be so sexually aggressive. She kicked a man in the face, and then she's fucking moaning to herself. Like it was so. I don't know if it was overwritten, if it was overacted. I mean, she played a hell of a role, but like it just felt so unnecessary. The movie could have existed without that weird sexual attraction to I need to watch bones get broken. Oh, sweet Jesus. Like it felt very, very awkward.
God damn it. It made me fucking forget about a character.
Okay.
Alan Cumming as Boris Grishenko. We'll get to him in likes.
Yeah. Sure. To continue with some dislikes, along with the sexual nature of that character, they made a lot of really poor attempts at lewd jokes. They tried to keep us. I don't know if it was sexual tension is the right word, but they tried to keep a sexuality to this film without like naked shirtless people running around. Like there was a whole bunch of lewd jokes that everything became a sexual reference, and I felt like it was just really redundant, overdone, and that detracted from the movie.
Yeah, which is going to be a criticism I'm going to have with Die Another Day. Because if you think it's bad in this one...
Even if not in a sexual tension, then, I thought... Barry mentioned this as we were watching all together. They have a really
by the way,
weird...
Barry had a huge crush on Captain Jensen in this movie, and we're just like... I
want to see a room full of his exes. I really do. The way he was, okay. but moving on. As he mentioned, which I kind of agreed with, is even if it wasn't in a sexual nature, everyone in this movie had a problem with personal space. There were, I noticed it most because of the cinematography of it, right? But like, you take a wide action scene or a wide camera scene, right? Like you're filming the entire setting, but then in only a third of the screen, there's two people who are standing so close that their noses are touching. Yeah. Like it didn't use the space well. It wasn't filmed well for what it was, and it made it very clear and awkward that people were so close together.
Right.
Another thing that I had was that physics in this movie were lazy. I thought the action sequences were good. I thought they were well written, not necessarily choreographed the same way they are to today's standards, but like they were composed well, they were shot well.
You can tell they're getting there.
Right. It just like a lot of the things that they did just, hey, this would look cool if we did this, and ignored the physics about it. The car chase specifically, like one car hit a stationary object, which like should have just destroyed the car, and then the car just jumped and flipped over. The car chases were like, hey, they're very clearly following this thing that's going to hit a bridge and then fall into both of their cars at the same time. Like it was just, it felt kind of lazy with physics. It wasn't so egregious as it was a few movies ago with the guns that don't work properly or explosions that shouldn't happen, but it definitely felt like they didn't put the effort in they could have to making things look realistic.
I can kind of get that. To me, I think some cases goes to like the beginning car chase, like after the title sequence. This is kind of like my other criticism is that they kind of throw. This is kind of a positive and a negative. Like it's a positive that this movie doesn't really drag. Like that throws you right into like the movie. But the problem I kind of have with it is it's kind of like throwing like a toddler into the deep end.
Yeah,
like you eventually get to where like, oh, so this is where everything leads to it. While at the beginning, it's like, okay, he's chasing this girl while being analyzed, and it's just like, what does this have to do with anything? You know, what does this have to do with like what happened at the pre-title sequence? Granted, like the pre-title sequences in a lot of these things are like are tied into the other one, but like when you see someone like Sean Bean in there, and you're just like, well, he wasn't like a nobody during this time.
Right.
You know, it's like, and it says starring Sean Bean. How does this tie in? And then you eventually get there and you're like, oh, okay. While in other cases, you know, you're trying to unravel the plot. In this case, like, it's almost like something's kind of like missing, you know?
Yeah, it definitely felt like there was a hole. Similarly to that, I thought like previous movies have had really strong villains. We've been on a trend even in the worst movies. Like there have been some strong villains. This one had a really strong character, even if I didn't like the character in the henchman. The villain just felt it felt like you were supposed to go in with backstory, not that there was any strong character or development
Right.
or anything along those lines. It was just like, hey, this thing we never showed you is something you're already supposed to know. Get it together. Um,
Yeah.
and
And
similarly to the physics, the henchwoman's death was egregiously stupid. It's set up to be
that
perfectly
is a
cool.
criticism of this movie is her death is
It's set up to be perfectly cool, and then they just totally underplayed it with more shitty physics. They gave her
I
all
think
the
they made
setups to have a really cool, hilarious sexual related death, and then it's just like, hey, there's a rope on a tree somewhere, and the helicopter. We were not going to explain it, but she's dead now. It was.
if they would have honestly, I think the main issue is that the scene happened too fast. Like if she was actually like there strangling and shit like that, or if you heard bones cracking and shit like that, it probably would have been like executed better as
Yeah.
opposed to her just like well, of course with the scream that was great, but then it's just like she hits the tree branch and then it just like
Well,
shakes for like 2 seconds and then dies.
you see her struggling. It jump cuts to the helicopter. It jump cuts back to her, and it's just like there's not. There's just nothing to it. It's pretty poor.
uh,
It's pretty poor.
yeah.
Uh,
As for the villain, all right, so there's a trope, and here's the thing: I like Alec Trevelyan as a villain. I do. But the problem is, I have with this, and this is just nitpicking. All right, this doesn't take away from the movie or anything like that. But I was just kind of thinking. All right, um, it's a trend of Bond villains to like oh, instead of like just shooting Bond in the head to like capture him, throw him into like this situation that he has the ability to escape from. A lot of cases, it's like, okay, well, this villain's probably doesn't know any better, or you can think of like ways Bond talks his way out of a
sure.
serious situation. This is Trevelyan like twice has two opportunities to just kill James Bond. Right, actually three right off the bat, and it just gives him like uh opportunities to escape.
Yeah,
And here's the thing.
this one hurt
Here's
the
the thing.
most.
All right, Alec Trevelyan's supposed to be like James Bond's best friend. He knows better.
I he
He
makes it
absolutely knows better.
he makes it so personal, right? It's just like, I know you need to die. Here's a circumstance that I couldn't get out of, but you have 3 minutes to escape because you told me 6 in the past in an event you
Oh,
didn't see.
we're gonna go into likes about that. You know why? Well, no. We saw that. We saw that. It was the pre-title sequence.
What? I get, like, my point is that it wasn't a development. Like, that's my sticking point. Is just we put
Well,
this in here so we could reference it later. Like, it was a throwaway.
oh wait, oh boy, wait. I actually got some. I could actually debate you on this.
Hit me. I'm
All right,
here.
this is gonna go with the likes, and this is a fan theory. All right. Throughout this movie, like M goes at Bond and how everybody was wondering like if Bond could continue in the in a post uh Cold War era. So you have M basically call it um Bond a sexist, misogynistic dinosaur of the Cold War, relic of the Cold War.
Sure.
And by the way, she still actually manages to say like, "Hey, I still care about my agents. Come back alive." Um, there's that going on. You also have Trevelyan mention Bond's past, a lot of the cases. Like, you're basically, drink yourself to death so that way you don't have to think about the people that you've killed. And you also sleep with all these women because of past relationships with women that you couldn't save. Tracy. That being said, it kind of shows that, Bond kind of trying to ignore his own past and just numbing all kind of the pain that he feels throughout that. And at the same time, Trevelyan's kind of doing the same, as in he never lets anything go. The reason why he's doing this plan is revenge against Britain, who turned his parents into the Soviet Union for aiding the Nazis, which, I'm sorry, Mr. Trevelyan, but that's a good thing. Your parents were assholes. Okay.
Sure.
Now,
I guess it's just it almost feels like they wrote the rest of the movie, then realized, man, I guess nobody did see that 6 minutes that turned into 3 in the pre-title sequence. Let's make it a pre-title sequence. It felt so throwaway.
Hold on, let me make my point. Jesus Christ!
Go ahead.
All right,
go ahead.
So he's dwelling upon everything, everything Bond kind of him and Bond know and deal with. He just throws in Bond's face. He doesn't give up the past. And then eventually when they're fighting and stuff, and then when, Trevelyan falls off the cradle antenna, Bond catches him, and he goes, "For England, James." And then Bond says, "No, for me," and lets him go, as if he is letting go of the past or attempting to and moving on and moving forward. And Trevelyan's demise on this is because he can't give up the past. He still lets it eats him.
I guess it's hard to give my full weigh in without seeing movies in the future, because if they start referencing this stuff again in the future, then that's going to feel like a waste from Bond's end. As far as Trevelyan goes, I guess just it feels like I don't know.
The next one, James Bond's past does affect him.
Right.
So
which makes that again, without seeing it, that makes that end of Bond's I'm physically letting go of the past. It makes that kind of worthless.
Well, I don't say worthless. It makes it like he's trying to, but his past just keeps on coming back, and no matter how much he's trying to, it doesn't fully,
I don't like the way that's scripted then at that rate. But either way, I think that death.
This is also my theory on it. All right, I could be putting too much into it for watching this movie too many times.
No, I mean what you're saying makes sense. I'm not hard at disagreeing. I guess it's just weird, especially because most of these movies can be standalones, right?
Yes.
This one felt like it should have been a sequel to something, but it was just a sequel to its own pre-title sequence.
Right, and it honestly probably could have been, because 91 would have been Timothy Dalton's third movie, and then it would have went with 93, which they could have picked Brosnan up for that.
Right.
And then this would have been the second Brosnan movie.
You mentioned earlier that you weren't sure if there was other things that got filmed in the between that just never made it or whatever. And I guess that would be reasonable enough, but it felt like this was supposed to be a sequel. They went, this is a good enough movie, we should make this one instead because it has to be a blockbuster, like you mentioned.
Right.
But then the preface to the movie was just the 4 minutes of pre-title sequence that just, I don't know. It felt kind of dumb the way that things were organized to make this happen. Had there been a full nother movie in front of this instead of the pre-title sequence to give you all the things that you needed to know there, great, so be it. And I would have less of a complaint about it, but just, hey, we made this movie as a follow-up to the 3 minutes that we filmed after we realized the movie didn't make sense after we made it. Just, it just sat in a really weird spot.
Yeah. I mean, I get your criticism, to me, I was just kind of I was just kind of thinking, because before I'm just him just going that line, "For England, James, no, for me." I'm like, that just sounds cool. And now I'm listening to it, I'm like, there's something to there. And then I was just thinking, Ted was complaining about the guy was talking about the 3 minutes. And it's like, he's really bringing up a lot of past shit. And then I'm like, got it.
What you're saying makes sense, and it makes me less upset about it. But like, still, it sits in a weird place, and I think that's mostly the way that they this movie.
Yeah.
Into some more likes if that's where we're going.
Yeah, we might as well transition into likes. I forgot to talk about this person. Godfrey John, a German actor who plays Oromov. I think he does an all right job being a sleazeball.
Yeah.
Despite his distractingly giant nose.
Oh man, he looks like I forget. I looked it up last night, but he looks like the alien character that flies around. Yes. He looks like the character from the Phantom Menace. That just it's so it's so bad and so big on his face. It looks prosthetic. I feel so bad insulting this man's physical appearance, but it genuinely did not fit his own face, and I'm very sure that it was genuinely his own nose.
My favorite thing is like his little reactions, like while Famke Jensen's just mowing down people in this like in the in this like Russian bunker base, and her moaning, he's just looking at her like, what the hell are you doing? Or like when like the tank chase where Bond's chasing with the tank, he just pulls up a flask and just starts drinking like, oh my god. There's just like little things that he does with that just like really work. And another person, Alan Cumming, legendary actor, probably best known for most people today as Nightcrawler in X-Men 2. So 2 X-Men references all in one. Yeah. His character Boris Grishenko is great. He's a complete and total narcissistic hacker asshole and is totally Ted without a beard playing Fall Guys.
True.
Yes, I'm invincible. And the funny thing is that when Ted sometimes would play like Pummel Party, or like he would like dodge things, and Dead by Daylight, he would just go, I'm invincible, and I'm like, oh yeah, I got that reference. And here I find out he doesn't know that he's making a reference. Cause he's only seen bits and pieces of this movie, and I'm like, what?
One cool positive that I had actually kind of follows that line about the villains was it felt really cool that no one had the whole plot line. None of the characters knew everything. There were characters that knew bits and pieces, other characters that knew different bits and pieces, so you as an audience recognized the whole thing, but there was no character who was just totally involved with the whole thing. I really thought that was a really cool way to develop the story to the audience and still have the characters be human instead of omnipotent. It was very, very cool way to save that problem. I thought that the action, I mentioned earlier that I thought the action was very good. They definitely fit a whole lot of good looking things into the correct places and the correct amount of both suspense and time drawn to the action. The movie's action worked really well if you could set the physics aside.
And it was also very well acted.
Yeah. The acting was
there is no Russian actor of the main cast.
Yeah, as Stallman was going through casting, I didn't want to spoil all the likes, but by
the way, I was kind of leading up to that. That's why I was saying like their ethnicity. It's like they're all, a lot of them are supposed to be Russian.
Yeah, well, this was probably the first movie that could have fooled you. Like, everyone hit their accents. Everyone did a really good job at making you believe that they were the character they were supposed to be. I kind of hate that it took 30 plus years for us to get to that point in Bond movies, but everybody did a phenomenal job, and we were genuinely able to suspend disbelief about who the characters were acted by.
And I also like Isabella Scorupko as Natalia Simonova. Like, she's actually, what she can do is like really, like, yeah, she's a computer programmer and everything like that, but she, like, she ends up doing things that Bond can't do. And then they also kind of have like a back and forth. Although the romance between them is a little kind of like cliche of like, oh hey, this death, like this
Right.
death-defying thing happened. Let's make out, like, but
not even worried about their own survival past the immediate moment. It's just like, hey, we lived, kiss me, bitch, and that was pretty much the way that it happened. It just less sexually aggressive.
After that, the chemistry is just still like really good, and her taking care of herself throughout this. It's kind of like not the first time that we have like a strong female character, but is one of the first times that we have a consistently strong female character, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Like,
go ahead.
I think another thing I like is that despite Bond kind of being somewhat pushy with the evaluator, but at the same time I think it's just more so like script bad, acted kind of badly. It's more so like I think they're trying to come across as like Bond's trying to charm his way into a good evaluation as opposed to like forcing himself on a pretty girl. But all the rest of this, like, he doesn't really like he doesn't force himself on Natalia. Natalia like initiates, the whole them like getting together, and with Xenia,
Yeah.
And even then, like, Bond just like, no, get away from me with Xenia. Like, it's like, holy shit, he has standards now.
There's a moment of indulgence, and then he realizes he's getting kicked in the mouth, and she's moaning, and he doesn't want this anymore. Like, it's not just anyone with a pulse. One thing that I thought was
first time since For Your Eyes Only with the underage girl.
Yeah. I thought that one thing that was really cool, as we're into, actors and hitting their roles.
Oh, and Judi Dench, who I freaking love.
Yeah, no, Judi Dench was exactly what I was going to mention. It felt that characters who have played major roles in all of these movies, I recognize M has been multiple actress now. There was personality to it. There was a character instead of just, it could have been a voice on a radio. Like, it was
even with small parts, like Robbie Coltrane's portrayal of Valentin. Like, he's not really in this a whole lot, but like even that was kind of like a memorable scenes, that the two scenes that he was in.
Yeah, again, there was so much personality in all of the characters that it felt like everyone, no matter the size of their role, got to act. My last thing on my list, then I would be remiss if I didn't mention cinematography. While I feel like there was not a whole lot notable about camera work or angles or jump cuts and things like that, the one thing that I will say was notably good was the set design. They were all like thorough and well thought out, but they weren't so intricate or so hard to film in that they became distracting from the rest of the movie.
And by the way, it was kind of distracting me a little bit because, being a huge fan of the video game, I'm just like, it's so cool that they really recreated like the sets that are from this movie into that.
For the people who played that game, like, absolutely, but I think to just watch the movie as it was, like, with ignoring the video game, like, the sets were thorough, they were thought out, they were filmed in good place. I mean, I've had complaints before that are like, man, that set looks really good until they speak, and then everything echoes 3 times over, because it was just a big empty room in a fancy-ass mansion, right? Like, that didn't happen here. I thought all of the sets and all of the places that they filmed were conducive to what they wanted to film. They fit the scene. They were thorough, but they weren't overdone. They weren't neglected. It was the set design, I thought, was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and the last thing I have to say that I really liked about this, although like the last couple films, I actually wouldn't say that we had like lackluster like villain deaths, but like, stuff that weren't as good as they could have been.
Right.
If that makes sense. I think that Trevelyan gets like when people think of like a Bond, like a stereotypical great Bond villain death, I think this one really takes the cake on that. Not just because like the the fight scene between them two is like really good, but like just having like the whole entire like antenna just like falling down on him after like he's like, because he's gonna die from the fall anyway. Like he just survived the fall and is like bleeding out, but just having like the entire like
They made an event of it.
yeah,
It was thorough. They made sure to finish the job. I agree.
and although I will say a complaint though, fuck you for killing off Boris, but although it was still funny, him going, yes, I'm invincible, surviving all that, then gets killed with like being frozen to death with liquid nitrogen, which wouldn't happen unless he was actually submerged under a period of time. But
physics.
Yeah.
I think with that, if you got nothing else for your list, I think we can get into rankings and wrap this one up.
Oh god, this is a fucking tough one for me.
Oh, I can go first if you want me to. I'm pretty confident about my rankings, which is the first time in a while. So I'm actually going to put this one 7th. I think I'm gonna peel back behind the curtains. Okay, I thought this was a good movie if I were just watching it. I think it would have been higher if I were going in for how much did you enjoy it. And I recognize that a lot of the reason that it's lower is because I feel like I'm going in as a critic. With that being said, the reason that it's 7th is I thought that The Man with the Golden Gun was more...
What is that above it? What?
Okay, listen, I'm here to explain that, Stallman, because I know you're going to yell at me. It's all right. I thought that The Man with the Golden Gun was more engaging. I thought that the positives that I had with that movie were more thoroughly positive. And while I had detractions from that movie and there were things that frustrated me, I felt like I had a more enjoyable experience even going in as a critic. This one just, while I recognize it to be good, and I don't want it being 7th to make it feel like it's bad, right? It just didn't grip me the way that I wanted it to. There were enough things about the movie making process and the characters within the movie that I just felt like never really fully flushed itself to what its potential could be. I felt like The Man with the Golden Gun was everything that it had the ability to be. It had more of a grip, and so I will say that this is a very close 7th to Man with the Golden Gun.
And, I mean, that being said, it's above Goldfinger, so that means you liked it.
I did. Like I said, I don't want the number of the ranking to detract from what this movie was.
Because he's like Spy Who Loved Me. He's like Living Daylights.
Yeah, this just didn't.
I mean, technically, You Only Live Twice and License to Kill. It's just you for some reason keep having Goldfinger at.
It's got for what it just has to stay, like it's doomed to be in the middle forever.
Yeah, with me, I think I'm gonna put this at number 3. I like it better than Living Daylights for sure. I don't think it is a better movie than OHMSS and From Russia with Love, even though they do try to like have some sort of like emotional things with it, as in like Bond being conflicted of having to kill his friend to complete the mission, and also even though there's great chemistry between him and Natalia, it's not all there. If that it seems kind of like an afterthought.
That makes sense.
And while From Russia with Love, the romance is, it builds up. And with OHMSS, the storyline and everything, just meshes together. And I honestly thought Goldeneye would have been the one to actually knock like OHMSS off its perch, and probably maybe knock From Russia with Love off your perch. But
no, like I said, this was good. It just didn't grip me enough to really thrust it up that list.
Yeah.
I think
I don't know if it has to, I don't know why if I'm being a little bit more critical because of like the hype around it, or
part of it too, I guess. Like I don't know if my list would genuinely, like, this is my own short-sightedness. I don't know if my list would change if we either watched them out of order or if we took longer breaks between them. Like if that would make any difference.
Right.
I guess I really enjoyed the thoroughness that Timothy Dalton put into Bond that I just didn't necessarily get out of this specific Brosnan performance. I know
Right.
that he has better ones. Like the few that I have seen, I know that he has better performances. Not necessarily better movies, but better performances, right?
Yeah, honestly, I'm kind of wondering if I'm gonna, because like, out of all the Brosnan movies, I'm least familiar with Tomorrow Never Dies, and I've only seen it like a handful of times. It's on all the time for whatever fucking reason now.
Yeah.
It never was before. It was just like, was that a Bond film?
Yeah.
I think it was. But I really kind of want to go into that. I do know that they had some like issues making that movie, which so that might have some like a detriment to it. But I'm honestly wondering if I want to kind of see how they really improve upon it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see.
Especially going back with what I know, what's involved in Tomorrow Never Dies, with what I've kind of have with my theory here, because like he ends up like running into like an ex-girlfriend in Tomorrow Never Dies. So again, like the past creeps up again to like fuck with him.
Yeah, like I said, I think this performance falls flat partially because of where we're comparing it to, the watching
Timothy
previous
Dalton
movies, right? Part of it falls flat just like execution. I think with all the tools that they had, like all the plot that they were given was good, but what they did with it was not. Like it sits in a lower spot than it could. Like I wish this lived up to the potential that I saw in it while watching it. I guess like that would make a difference for me. I genuinely, like, looking back over my list, I want to say that, everything underneath Goldeneye is where we go from great to good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, or even if it's less than that, if it's good to, better than average, whatever that line, like there's a very clear distinction for me at this point between Goldeneye and Living Daylights. That the Goldeneye was genuinely good. I have enough to detract from it that I can't push it higher.
Well, in that case, if you are not angry with Ted, who is wrong,
it's okay.
Fucking golden gun. Slide whistle is better than Goldeneye.
All right, I think that feels like a pretty staple place to wrap this one up.
Yeah.
All right.
I guess you do your outro.
All right. So, thank you guys for watching. I have to mention the counter because we haven't mentioned it to this episode. And Stallman, you outdone yourself, bud. You're about 40 higher than you were last week. But be sure to check up with us in the Discord. At the time this one gets posted, I think we'll have. Is it 3 more to go? We have 26. So yeah, we'll have 3 more movies to go. 3 or 4 more movies to go, so you can catch up with us on Tuesdays.
Remember, we're watching 3 versions of Casino Royale. So
right. Well, you said there are 26 movies, right? This one's number 18, so 8 movies. If we're 5 weeks ahead, that leaves us 3 movies. Okay, so
well, no, we're not for 5 weeks. We're 4 weeks. Remember?
I don't know anything.
No, are we down to?
Whatever is happening, we'll at least have a few more movies to watch on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
Join us in the Discord. You can catch those out with us. We usually start 6:30 to 7 Eastern. So you can come check those out with us. Obviously, check out previous episodes that have happened. There's been 18 other episodes because we threw in that bonus one. Check us both out on Twitch. Stallman at Traductus, myself at Ted Green Eagles, and both of those will be linked below. Otherwise, I think that about wraps us up. So,
yeah.
You have a good night. See you next week.